Good Shabbos. One of the bigger challenges that we have as parents today is to transmit our values and that which we care about to our children. It used to be much easier for parents to be able to give over their values, their ethics to their children. As children saw their parents in a more respectful way, children would receive all their information from their parents and therefore their values as well. Today, we have children who receive their information from everyone else, from all kind of sources. They're all connected to all kinds of voices and to receive values based on that. And they're not dependent on the older generation for it. And hence, there's a lack of respect, a lack of acceptance of authority. And so we have to find other ways to communicate our values that they will actually accept and live by. So what might that be? Now, there's an interesting concept that we learn from the beginning of this week's Torah portion, where Moses is commanded to speak to the Kohanim, the priests, and say to them. In other words, there's a double expression. Emor la Kohanim b'nei Aaron, speak to the Kohanim, children of Aaron. And then it says, V'amarta aleim, say to them. And the Talmud asks, why this double expression? And he answers that one is to speak to the Kohanim themselves, and the other is for the Kohanim to be responsible not to do what they're not allowed to do to their children. So if they're not allowed to become impure, they're not allowed to make their children impure. Now we find this idea three different places in the Torah. We find it by Kohanim, in the laws that Kohanim should not become impure. We find it in when the Torah tells us not to eat creepy, crawling insects and so on. And we find it when the Torah tells us not to drink blood, not to eat blood. And in these three areas, the Torah says not only you're not allowed to, but you're not allowed to give it to the youngsters, to the young people. Never asked the question, why do we need three different places? Why can't you tell it to us in one place, like many other laws? And from there, we know everywhere else. And the Rebbe says that each one of these places has a uniqueness that the others don't have, and we would therefore think that the education won't work in that area. So, one problem is when you have a child who is off the wall, who's doing crazy things, who you feel like there's no way I could communicate to him. There's no way I could actually make a difference because this kid is doing like the weirdest, strangest, most difficult things for me to be able to educate him. We're told, our sages tell us, that eating creeping things was absolutely disgusting. Most people would vomit from it and would be disgusted by it. So if someone was eating that means to say he is so decrepit. How are you going to reach him? The Torah nevertheless tells us, even such a person, you can educate. On the other hand, blood was the norm for people to drink at that time. Not only that, even today, non-kosher meat is blood, because non-kosher meat hasn't been salted properly and therefore is filled with blood. It makes the meat more moist and people really like it. So people who are having the blood, so to speak, in non-kosher meat are enjoying that. And it's the norm. And what this represents is the fact that you have sometimes where the child might say, everyone's doing it. Or the child is so engrossed in the pleasure of doing something that is not acceptable or not okay, that how are you going to get him out of that? When he says everyone does it, and when he says that, or she says that, I'm addicted to it, how do you get him out of that? The Torah tells us even then you're able to do so. And the third challenge is things that are beyond our logic, beyond our understanding. A Kohen not becoming impure, or generally the laws of purity and impurity are beyond logical understanding. And so we might think, how am I going to communicate to my children something in an area that is so removed from me that I don't even understand myself? The Torah tells us that you can even communicate education then. How? But how? How do you do it? How do you tell a Kohen not to become impure? That means not to go on different trips, not to go visit people in hospitals sometimes, when all the friends are. How do you? It's so hard for them. Why should I be different? There was a woman in Vienna. Her name was Rachel Schiff. She was a young girl. She was an Orthodox Jewish girl, and therefore would only sing in front of other Jewish women. And she had a magnificent voice, to the extent that the head of the opera in Vienna heard about it. And he went for himself, and somehow or another, he was able to hear her sing. And he was so taken aback by the exquisiteness of her singing, that he says, this girl has to sing in the Vienna opera. So he meets her in the middle of the street somewhere. And he says to her, Rachel, I have a job for you. I'm going to make you a singer in the Vienna opera. You'll be famous. You'll be praised. You'll have money. You are a voice like yours is a once in 50 year. Does such a voice come into this world? And she was quite disturbed. She didn't know what to do. On the one hand, it was really enticing. On the other hand, she knew, this is the beginning of the 1900s, that doing that job would tear her away from her people. At those times, if you wanted to be part of a high society, you had to convert. You had to remove yourself from your culture and from your people. She didn't know what to do. So she went to visit a Hasidic master who lived at that time in Vienna. He was known as the Kapistnitzer Rebbe, Rabbi Heschel of Kapistnitz. And she went to him and told him her dilemma. And what should she do? So he asks her, tell me, what entices you about singing in the opera? Is it the money? She says, no, it's not the money. We're comfortable enough. Is it the praise? Is it the fame? She says, yes, that's what it is. It's the accolades. It's the fame that I'm going to get, and the praise. That's what entices me to be part of this. So the Kapistnitzer Rebbe says to her, what's if I tell you that if you don't take that job and you remain with your people, I will bless you to have a son who will be famous for his piety and for his scholarship amongst the Jewish people. Would you then forego this job? And she says, with a tear in her eye, yes. Indeed, she didn't take the job. She married a Rabbi Wosner, and they had a son called Shmuel. And Shmuel Wosner and his wife miraculously were saved from the Holocaust. They went on a ship to Israel, and the ship actually ran out of gas prior to the port of Israel. They both jumped off and swam ashore. And then he went to study Torah, and he became one of the great halachic authorities of the past century. He wrote a book called Shevet HaLevi, or a series of books. And when he passed away at the age of 101, he had over 100,000 people at his funeral. He was asked, did he ever hear the story about his mother? He says, no. But his mother never told him that. But what she did say is when he went to the yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin, when he was a youngster, she says, you better learn well, because you don't know what I gave up for your Torah learning. So that's what some of what she told him. But the fascinating thing about the story is, what did the Kapistnitzer Rebbe do? He didn't tell this woman, how could you? How dare you? How disconnect from your people? It's a decrepit thing you're going to do, etc. No. He says, what do you want? You want praise? You want honor? Well, get your praise and honor for your child. That's how we have to view the situation today. We can't warn people. We can't threaten them. We can't tell them negative things. We have to show them the beauty and how much we love our Yiddishkeit, how much it inspires us and what we take from it. There was Rabbi Shmuel tells a story in the early 60s. He went to speak in front of 300 college students, of which 20 later came 30 days, a month later for a Shabbaton in Crown Heights. And they later on went in for a private audience with the Rebbe. And one of them remained for an hour and a half by the Rebbe. Found out what happened after he left the Rebbe. He said that he was a Kohen. He was a priest, and he was going to marry. He was going out with a non-Jewish girl, and the plan was for her to convert and to get married. But a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee or a convert. And so the Rebbe was trying to convince him out of it. And then the Rebbe says to him like this. The Rebbe says, "You see all these books on the walls there?" He says, "I I know all the books in this study, and nevertheless, I cannot be a Kohen. And you, who were given this by your parents, want to just throw it away?" So this is a Kohen. A Kohen is something that Hashem has chosen you from amongst all the Jewish people to be the one serving in his temple, the one who is at the forefront of the Jewish people. It's something that you want to keep, something you don't want to throw away. When we show our children that Shabbos is beautiful and Yom Tov, we're going to buy you new clothes. What special food should we make? What special gift to give you? We show them that we appreciate it, we love it. That's how we communicate it to our children. Whether the challenge is a difficult child, whether the challenge is a difficult temptation that everyone's doing, or whether it's something beyond our understanding, but nevertheless we know this is important, we can communicate this to our children. Good Shabbos.